Hellraiser. Those regular on my channel will know it is one of my favourite topics to discuss, and as such, it is one of my all-time favourite horror movies. Is it a groundbreaking masterpiece by today's standards? Absolutely not. Has it inspired a generation of horror movies and rose to an iconic level due to its uniqueness? Yes. I have a major soft spot for this movie, and what I wanted to do today was run down a bunch of facts that I personally found interesting surrounding Hellraiser, that I think you will too, from its production to its director through to some behind the scenes decisions. One of the most iconic things about this movie are the Cenobites. They lurk, they aren't explained, they simply are. The other iconic thing is Pinhead. He is a horror icon that actually talks, which is incredibly unusual when you look across the other major iconic horror figures. It's not a first, but it is unusual, and this came from Clive Barker. He explained his reasoning to Crimson Celluloid in 1988 by stating the following. Generally, in monster movies, the monsters don't talk about their condition, about being a monster. What I wanted Frank to be able to do was have dialogue scenes, even romantic scenes that play between him and Julia. I wanted Frank to be able to stand around and talk about his ambitions and desires, because I think what the monsters in movies have to say for themselves is every bit as interesting as what the human beings have to say. That's why in stalk and slash films, I feel that half the story is missing. These creatures simply become, in a very boring way, abstractions of evil. Evil is never abstract, it is always concrete, always particular, and always vested in individuals. To deny the creatures as individuals the right to speak, to actually state their case, is perverse. Because I want to hear the devil speak. I think that's a British attitude. I like the idea that a point of view can be made by the dark side. Leading off from that, the Cenobites. They were actually real actors. You wouldn't have known, obviously, because of prosthetics and very little said or indeed done at all. But Clive Barker wanted real actors rather than just a slasher flick full of teens to kill off. Doug Bradley was a highly regarded theatre actor, Claire Higgins, who played Julia, and of course Andrew Robinson, who played Kirsty's father, were all considered to be talented actors. Something that Clive insisted upon when casting, and one that reflects in the final product. This comes as no revelation to anyone, of course, but the designs of the Cenobites were heavily inspired by S&M clubs. In fact, their whole thing is very sadomasochistic in and unto itself. In his own words, Clive Barker states that the Cenobites' design was influenced amongst other things by punk, by Catholicism, and by the visits I would take to S&M clubs in New York and Amsterdam. It would be a form of repulsive glamour, and in fact, magnificent super butchers. Specifically for Pinhead, Clive has said he had seen a book containing photographs of African fetishes, sculptures of human heads crudely carved from wood and then pierced with dozens, sometimes hundreds of nails and spikes. They were images of rage, the text instructed. The extremely iconic lament configuration, the doorway to hell, the means by which the Cenobites are summoned, was actually inspired by Clive Barker's grandfather. In an interview with Wired, Clive stated, "I wanted to have access to hell in the book and in the first movie, explored by something rather different than drawing a circle on the floor with magical symbols around it. So, when I went back to the problem of how to open the doors of hell, the idea of using a puzzle box seemed interesting to me. You know, the image of a cube is everywhere in world culture, whether it's the Rubik's Cube or the idea of the Tesseract in the Avengers movies. There's a lot of places where the image of a cube as a thing of power is pertinent. I don't know why that is, I don't have any mythic explanation for it, but it seems to work for people. And of course, remember Frank and the rats? A scene that flies under the radar to some, but sticks in many people's minds, and certainly did with the British Board of Film Classification. They were willing to release the film to the British public, so long as they were assured that no rats were actually harmed during the making of the film. The producer on the film, Christopher Figg, explains how he had to bring 3 remote control rats into the censor's office and make them wriggle around on the floor, all to prove they hadn't actually hurt any rats in the making of the scenes. Doug Bradley, the Pinhead, and Clive Barker are in fact old friends. Hellraiser would be Doug Bradley's first on-screen appearance, and as such, he wanted to show his face. Why? Well, to make it as an actor, typically speaking, you have to have your face on show. For this reason alone, Doug Bradley almost never became the iconic figure. And incidentally, Pinhead was never actually the creature's name. Pinhead was a fan term, due to his appearance, and one that Clive Barker personally does not like. In the script and the credits to Hellraiser, Pinhead is simply called the Lead Cenobite. And hilariously, the film was initially titled Sadomasochists from Beyond the Grave, a title that is as long as it is forgettable. Hellraiser was chosen as presumably an offshot from The Hellbound Heart, the novel the movie is adapted from. And of course, a lot of people give the movie flack for it not being true to the novel, with regards to some of the mythos and also the Hell Priest, Pinhead, being a man rather than a sexually ambiguous figure as they are in the novel. However, it's important to note that Clive Barker wrote the script, the screenplay, everything for this movie. All complaints over it not being closer to the novel are somewhat moot when the creator of both the novel it was adapted from made the movie as well. It really is an adaptation, not a true on-screen retelling. And you can actually thank Rawhead Rex for Hellraiser. Why do I say this? Well, Clive Barker was sick of his properties being sold off and butchered. After the horrendous Rawhead Rex adaptation, which is so far from what Clive Barker had intended, he saw fit to try and make a movie himself, and Hellraiser would be that film. It would also be his directorial debut. In the initial script, Pinhead wasn't the only one to talk. Butterball and Chatterer were also to have dialogue. Unfortunately for them, the prosthetic makeup they wore made it incredibly difficult, near impossible, for them to deliver these lines. So as such, these lines were then crossed over to both Pinhead and the female Cenobite. One of the most iconic lines in the entire movie is in fact an ad-lib. Larry Cotton, or the Frank-wearing Larry Cotton skin version anyway, ad-libbed his "Jesus wept" line, when in actuality the script stated he should simply say "F off." A pretty great addition to the movie, if I ever did see one, and one that has now become one of the film's most iconic quotes. And to end it all, the female Cenobite was initially titled Deep Throat, due to the wound on her neck. This changed due to its sexually suggestive nature, and the movie was already R-rated enough for the 80s. So I hope you enjoyed these 10 or so facts about Hellraiser. This isn't, of course, 10 facts about the Hellraiser universe, but more specifically just the initial movie itself. If you want to see more of these types of videos, then please do let me know by leaving a comment, and if any of these were new to you, again, I'd really love to hear about it. If you did enjoy this, then give it a big thumbs up, as that really helps me and the channel out. And also, sharing the videos on social media is a really great way to get the videos out there to a wider audience. As always though, I would really love to hear your thoughts, so please drop them down below in the comment section. And if you want to see more Hellraiser related content, then please do hit that subscribe button to stay notified of all my future videos. If you like the content I produce and you want to support me and the channel, plus get access to exclusive content, then check out my Patreon page via the link in the description box. I've been Mr. H, and until next time, I will catch you in the comment section.